The arrival. Have you ever stepped into a place that felt alive, not just old, not just sacred, but aware of you, as though it was listening? That's exactly what the people of St. Maria's Chapel felt that night. And by the end of the evening, every single one of them would swear the church didn't just listen, it spoke back. But before I tell you what happened inside that chapel, make sure you hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell, because stories like this one, you don't want to miss them. The town of Alaris Hill had one rule no one ever really broke. When the chapel bells rang after sunset, you did not go in. It was an old superstition, passed down from their grandparents, that after dark, the church belonged to the dead. No one knew where the legend began, but most people respected it. All except one woman. Her name was Clara Mendez. Clara was 27, sharp, stubborn, and, as most people in town whispered, too curious for her own good. She had moved back to Alaris Hill a few months ago after her mother's passing, inheriting the old house near the woods. Inside that house, she discovered something no one was supposed to find, an object that should have stayed buried. It started innocently enough. While cleaning her mother's attic, she found a leather-bound journal sealed inside a wooden box, wrapped in a rosary. The first page was written in shaky Latin. Clara didn't understand it, but one sentence stood out, written in English, underlined twice. The cross sleeps beneath the chapel, and when it wakes, faith will be tested. At first, she laughed it off. Some kind of medieval church myth. But the more she read, the more real it felt. The journal spoke about a relic, a wooden cross said to contain a divine presence. It was hidden centuries ago under St. Maria's Chapel, locked away because the priests of that time feared its power. According to the journal, the cross was alive, not in the way a person is alive, but aware, capable of choosing who was worthy to touch it. For weeks, Clara couldn't sleep. She dreamed of the chapel, of flickering candles and whispers echoing through the pews. Every dream ended the same way, a voice, calm, patient, but commanding, saying, "Bring me back." At first, she ignored it. But it didn't stop. One rainy Thursday evening, the townspeople gathered for the usual mass. It was a somber night, thunder rolled across the hills. Inside, the chapel smelled like wet stone and burning wax. At the altar stood Father Emmanuel, a man who had served this parish for almost 3 decades. He was known for his kindness, but he was also known for something else, silence about the chapel's history. Whenever anyone asked about the old catacombs or the relics said to be buried underneath, he would simply say, "The past belongs to God alone." That night, as Father Emmanuel prepared for Mass, he noticed something unusual. The air inside the chapel felt thick, heavier than usual. The candles burned shorter flames, and a faint hum echoed through the wooden beams. He looked toward the doors just as Clara entered. She was drenched from the rain, her hair stuck to her face. She clutched her coat tightly around her, and under it, something long and wrapped in cloth. She didn't speak to anyone. She just found a seat in the last pew and bowed her head. Father Emmanuel recognized her immediately. Clara's mother had been one of his parishioners, and he remembered the funeral vividly. He gave her a soft nod, then continued setting up the altar. No one else noticed that Clara never removed her coat. The service began as usual. The organ groaned to life, and the choir's voices rose in slow harmony. The thunder outside rattled the stained glass windows, and shadows danced along the walls. Father Emmanuel's sermon that evening was about faith, the kind that remains even when the world goes dark. He said, "True faith is not believing because you see, but seeing because you believe." The words hit Clara like a knife. She shifted in her seat. Her hand brushed the wrapped object under her coat. Her heartbeat quickened. At that exact moment, one of the candles near the altar flickered, then went out. No wind. Just darkness swallowing that corner of the room. Father Emmanuel glanced at it, frowning. He continued preaching. But Clara could barely focus. The same voice from her dreams whispered in her mind again, "Bring me back." Her hand trembled. She leaned forward, whispering to herself, "Not now, please not now." The woman sitting beside her turned her head slightly, confused. Clara offered a quick, nervous smile and faced forward again. The mass continued. Thunder rolled. The final hymn began. And that's when everything started to unravel. Halfway through the hymn, the chapel lights began to flicker. The organ's sound wavered, keys pressing on their own. The congregation murmured. Father Emmanuel raised a hand. Please, remain calm. The storm may have affected the power. But before he could finish the sentence, a sharp bang echoed from the back of the chapel, the exact spot where Clara sat. Everyone turned. Her seat was empty. The woman beside her gasped. She was just here. Father Emmanuel froze. Clara? Nothing. He called again, louder this time. Clara! No response. A few parishioners began standing, craning their necks. The back doors were still closed. The side exits were locked. The only sound was the slow creaking of the wooden floorboards and the rain slamming against the roof. The priest motioned to one of the ushers. Check the hallway. The usher jogged toward the back, flashlight in hand. Seconds later, his voice echoed from the darkness, Father, you should come see this. Emmanuel hesitated, then walked down the aisle, his cassock sweeping across the marble floor. When he reached the back, he saw the usher pointing at something on the ground, a trail of wet footprints leading toward the door to the crypt, the underground chamber no one had entered in decades. Emmanuel's face drained of color. That door was sealed, he whispered. The usher swallowed hard. Not anymore. The door stood slightly open, its hinges rusted, a faint cold draft spilling out. The other parishioners gathered near the back, whispering nervously. Is she down there? Someone asked. Why would anyone go into the crypt? Another murmured. Father Emmanuel didn't answer. He took a deep breath and stepped toward the door. Stay here. I'll bring her back. He pushed the door open, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into total darkness. He hesitated, and then descended. The crypt smelled of damp stone and decay. Water dripped rhythmically somewhere in the distance. Emmanuel's flashlight cut through the black, revealing tombs carved into the walls. Names long erased by time. Crosses. Candles turned to dust. Clara? His voice echoed faintly. No answer. He took another step. The ground squished under his shoes, mud. No, it was melted wax. Thick, congealed, as if candles had been burning recently. His flashlight flickered once, then steadied. He saw movement. Just for a second, a figure turning a corner at the far end of the corridor. Clara, wait, he called out. He quickened his pace. His footsteps echoed louder. He reached the end of the hall, and froze. On the stone altar at the very center of the crypt lay the cloth bundle Clara had carried in. It was unwrapped, revealing an ancient wooden cross, its surface cracked and blackened with age. And next to it, Clara. Kneeling. Her eyes closed, lips moving silently. Clara, he said gently. She didn't look up. Child, what have you done? Her voice came out barely above a whisper. I brought it back. Before he could respond, the ground trembled softly. The air turned icy. A single candle on the wall flared to life, though no match had touched it. Then another. And another. Until the entire crypt was bathed in flickering light. Clara lifted her head slowly. Her eyes glowed faintly, not with color, but reflection. The cross, it woke up, she said. Emmanuel took a step back. What are you talking about? She pointed to the relic. The cracks along its surface were pulsing with a faint, golden light. Do you hear it? She whispered. He didn't, but then, faintly, like a whisper trapped inside stone, he heard it too. A voice, ancient and layered, murmuring in a language he couldn't understand. The light on the cross brightened. The walls groaned. A shadow moved along the ceiling, not cast by either of them. Clara, we need to leave. Now. She shook her head. It's not done yet. the shadow stretched, reaching down the walls like long fingers. The candles sputtered. Then everything went dark. A single scream echoed up the stairs. Minutes later, the people upstairs heard the heavy slam of the crypt door, and Father Emmanuel's desperate voice shouting, "Stay inside. Do not come down here." The congregation froze. The organ let out one low, rumbling note, though no one was touching it. Children began crying. Mothers clutched their hands. The lights flickered again. And then, from deep below, came a single, deafening sound. The church bell. It rang once, then stopped. No one had rung that bell in over 20 years. Narrator, voiceover. That night, something ancient awoke beneath St. Mariah's chapel. And by morning, nothing in Alaris Hill would ever be the same again. The search and the rising fear. Have you ever noticed how silence can be louder than sound? When something terrifying happens, it's not the scream that chills you, it's the silence that follows. That's exactly what filled St. Mariah's chapel the moment Father Emmanuel's voice vanished beneath the earth. But before I take you further down those steps, make sure you like this video, and subscribe if you haven't yet, because what you're about to hear isn't just a story, it's a warning. For a long moment, no one moved. The congregation stood frozen, their faces pale in the flickering light. The storm still raged outside, wind pressing against the stained glass windows like invisible hands. And below them, in the crypt, came the echo of something, shifting. The usher who'd gone with Emmanuel turned toward the crowd, his voice shaking. "Stay where you are," he whispered. Father said, "Don't come down." But human fear doesn't listen to reason. A few people began whispering prayers, others clutched rosaries. Then, a sound. It came from the front of the chapel, near the altar, 3 soft knocks. Like someone tapping gently on wood. Every head turned. The knocks came again, tap, tap, tap. An old man stood up, trembling. That's coming from the altar itself." The usher frowned, grabbed a lantern, and approached. The flame trembled as he moved closer. The air around the altar was colder. Much colder. He placed his ear against the wood. For a second, he heard nothing. Then, faintly, a woman's voice whispering from beneath the altar. He stumbled backward, eyes wide. "There's someone under there." The congregation erupted in noise, gasps, screams, questions. "Is it her?" someone shouted. "Is it Clara?" The usher tried to answer, but before he could speak, a loud bang echoed through the room. The crypt door downstairs had slammed shut. Every candle flickered violently. And then, the church bell rang again. One deep toll. Then another. The sound didn't come from above, though, it was coming from beneath their feet. Down in the crypt, Father Emmanuel struggled to see. His flashlight had flickered out completely, leaving only the faint glow of the ancient cross. He could hear Clara breathing somewhere near him, but when he called her name, she didn't respond. The voice that had whispered moments ago was gone. In its place was a low hum, like distant chanting. He took a step forward. The floor was slick. The walls seemed to breathe with the flickering light. Then, out of nowhere, Clara spoke. But it wasn't a plea for help. She said, "It remembers me." Emmanuel froze. "Clara, what do you mean?" She turned toward him. Her eyes shimmered faintly in the dark. "When I touched it, I saw things. Faces. The priests who buried it. They thought they were hiding evil. But they weren't. They were burying fear itself." He shook his head, panic rising. "You've been deceived. Put it down, child. We'll take it back to the altar." She smiled weakly. "You can't take it back. It's already awake." The walls groaned again, dust falling from the ceiling. The cross pulsed brighter. Emmanuel instinctively reached for the crucifix hanging around his neck and began to pray aloud. That's when the lights upstairs exploded. Back in the chapel, every bulb popped in sequence, pop, 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 showering glass onto the pews. The people screamed. The organ blasted a discordant note by itself, vibrating through the floorboards. A woman cried out, "Lord, save us." The usher rushed toward the exit doors, but when he grabbed the handle, it burned his skin. He yelped and pulled back. The metal was scalding hot, though no fire burned nearby. At that moment, a young boy sitting with his mother began whispering something. She turned to hush him, but froze when she realized he was whispering in Latin. The same words repeated over and over. In lumen cadit umbra. In lumen cadit umbra. In the light, the shadow falls. The mother grabbed him, shaking him. Where did you hear that? The boy blinked, confused, and then, as if coming out of a trance, burst into tears. Down below, Emmanuel continued his prayer louder, his voice echoing off the stone. The chanting sound intensified, surrounding him from all directions. He turned and saw shapes forming along the walls, faint outlines, like shadows detached from any body. Each one bowed toward the cross. Clara stood completely still, her hair blowing in a wind that wasn't there. She whispered something, too soft to hear. The shadows began to rise from the walls, converging toward her. Emmanuel shouted her name, but she didn't move. The light from the cross flared again, blinding, golden, searing, and Emmanuel felt himself thrown backward. He hit the floor hard. When his vision cleared, Clara was gone. The cross remained on the stone altar, glowing faintly. He staggered to his feet, panting, and looked around. Clara! Clara! Only his echo answered. Upstairs, the crowd had devolved into chaos. The candles had gone out completely, plunging everyone into darkness. Children screamed, adults shouted orders no one followed. And then, another sound rose over the noise. Footsteps. Soft, deliberate, echoing from the center aisle. One of the men turned his phone flashlight toward the sound, and froze. Clara was standing there. Her clothes were torn, her hands blackened with soot. She looked dazed, but alive. Everyone stepped back as she began to walk slowly toward the altar. Clara, the usher stammered. Where's Father Emmanuel? She didn't answer. She just kept walking, barefoot, leaving wet footprints on the marble floor. Someone screamed when they realized the water dripping from her fingertips was red. Clara stopped at the altar, turned toward the crowd, and spoke. Her voice was calm. Too calm. He's still down there. Who? Father Emmanuel, she said softly. He told me to come up first. The crowd relaxed slightly, but only for a second. Because then Clara added something that froze every drop of blood in their veins. She said, he told me not to let anyone leave until it's done. The usher stepped forward cautiously. Clara, listen, everyone's scared. What happened down there? She tilted her head, almost childlike. It's okay. You'll understand soon. Someone whispered, she's possessed. Another muttered, we need to get out. As they spoke, the church doors creaked again, but this time, they didn't open outward. They sealed shut, wood warping as if welded together. The windows darkened, blocking out lightning flashes. The room filled with a strange vibration, like a low hum of electricity running through the walls. Clara raised her hand. It wants to speak. The hum grew louder, vibrating through their ribs. The organ keys pressed down by themselves again, forming a haunting chord. One by one, the people fell silent, unable to move, frozen by some unseen force. Clara stepped to the center of the aisle, lifted her arms, and said softly, "You've been called to witness." And then, she collapsed. The force vanished instantly. Screams erupted. The usher rushed forward, grabbing Clara's shoulders. Her eyes fluttered open weakly. "He's still there," she whispered. "Who?" Her voice cracked. "The priest. But not Emmanuel. The one who buried the cross." The usher stared, confused. "What are you talking about?" But she was already slipping out of consciousness. He laid her gently on a pew and turned to the others. "We need to get her out." A few men grabbed the doors, pulling, pushing, kicking, nothing. The wood didn't even splinter. That's when they heard it again. Footsteps. Coming up from the crypt. Slow. Heavy. Deliberate. Each step echoed through the empty hallway, getting closer, 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 until everyone could see the faint glow of light spilling from the stairwell. And then, through the doorway, a figure appeared. Father Emmanuel. He was pale, trembling, covered in dust. His flashlight hung limply from his hand. Everyone gasped in relief, until they saw his eyes. They weren't looking at anyone. They were staring straight ahead, unfocused, hollow. The usher ran up to him. "Father, are you okay?" Emmanuel didn't answer. He simply walked past him, toward the altar. His lips moved soundlessly, whispering something too low to hear. He climbed the steps to the altar, looked up at the crucifix, and then smiled. A strange, eerie smile. He turned to the congregation. "It's awake." The usher frowned. "What's awake, Father?" Emmanuel blinked slowly. "Faith." Then he collapsed. They rushed to help him, but the second his body hit the floor, the candles ignited themselves again, every single one. The flames burned blue. The organ played on its own, louder this time, a chaotic swirl of notes. And behind the altar, the wall began to crack, a thin line running straight down the center, glowing faintly from within. The usher stumbled back. What in God's name? The wall split open with a deafening crack. Light poured through, but it wasn't sunlight. It was golden, almost liquid, swirling like fire suspended in water. Everyone shielded their eyes. And from inside that glowing fissure, a voice echoed, layered and ancient, neither male nor female. "You buried me in darkness. You forgot my name. But faith never dies, it only sleeps." The voice grew louder, shaking dust from the ceiling. People screamed, dropped to their knees, praying, sobbing. Clara stood on the pew, her eyes flickering open. She stared at the crack and whispered, "It's the cross. It's speaking." Father Emmanuel's limp body twitched once, then twice. His eyes flew open. He gasped, and in a voice that wasn't his own, he whispered, "You should have left me buried." Then every candle went out. The chapel plunged into darkness again. The only light was the faint glow from the fissure, pulsing like a heartbeat. The usher stumbled backward, shaking. He turned to the others, voice cracking, "We have to get out now." But Clara's voice cut through the panic, calm, steady, almost entranced. "No," she said. "If we run, it follows." Everyone froze. "What do you mean?" She pointed at the fissure. "That light, it's not evil. It's what's left of their faith. The priests sealed it away because they didn't understand it. But now it's awake, and it wants to test us." The usher shook his head. "Test us? For what?" Her lips trembled. "To see if we still believe." The people of Alaris Hill thought they were inside a church. But that night, the chapel became something else entirely, a place where light itself demanded proof of faith. The revelation and the haunting light. Before we continue, if you're still watching, I want you to pause for a second and imagine something. Another muttered, "We need to get out." As they spoke, the church doors creaked again, but this time, they didn't open outward. They sealed shut, wood warping as if welded together. The windows darkened, blocking out lightning flashes. The room filled with a strange vibration, like a low hum of electricity running through the walls. Clara raised her hand. "It wants to speak." The hum grew louder, vibrating through their ribs. The organ keys pressed down by themselves again, forming a haunting chord. One by one, the people fell silent, unable to move, frozen by some unseen force. Clara stepped to the center of the aisle, lifted her arms, and said softly, "You've been called to witness." And then, she collapsed. The force vanished instantly. Screams erupted. The usher rushed forward, grabbing Clara's shoulders. Her eyes fluttered open weakly. "He's still there," she whispered. "Who?" Her voice cracked. "The priest. But not Emmanuel. The one who buried the cross." The usher stared, confused. "What are you talking about?" But she was already slipping out of consciousness. He laid her gently on a pew and turned to the others. "We need to get her out." A few men grabbed the doors, pulling, pushing, kicking, nothing. The wood didn't even splinter. That's when they heard it again. Footsteps. Coming up from the crypt. Slow. Heavy. Deliberate. Each step echoed through the empty hallway, getting closer, 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 until everyone could see the faint glow of light spilling from the stairwell. And then, through the doorway, a figure appeared. Father Emmanuel. He was pale, trembling, covered in dust. His flashlight hung limply from his hand. Everyone gasped in relief, until they saw his eyes. They weren't looking at anyone. They were staring straight ahead, unfocused, hollow. The usher ran up to him. "Father! Are you okay?" Emmanuel didn't answer. He simply walked past him, toward the altar. His lips moved soundlessly, whispering something too low to hear. He climbed the steps to the altar, looked up at the crucifix, and then smiled. A strange, eerie smile. He turned to the congregation. "It's awake." The usher frowned. "What's awake, Father?" Emmanuel blinked slowly. "Faith." Then he collapsed. They rushed to help him, but the second his body hit the floor, the candles ignited themselves again, every single one. The flames burned blue. The organ played on its own, louder this time, a chaotic swirl of notes. And behind the altar, the wall began to crack, a thin line running straight down the center, glowing faintly from within. The usher stumbled back. What in God's name? The wall split open with a deafening crack. Light poured through, but it wasn't sunlight. It was golden, almost liquid, swirling like fire suspended in water. Everyone shielded their eyes. And from inside that glowing fissure, a voice echoed, layered and ancient, neither male nor female. "You buried me in darkness. You forgot my name. But faith never dies, it only sleeps." The voice grew louder, shaking dust from the ceiling. People screamed, dropped to their knees, praying, sobbing. Clara stirred on the pew, her eyes flickering open. She stared at the crack and whispered, "It's the cross. It's speaking." Father Emmanuel's limp body twitched once, then twice. His eyes flew open. He gasped, and in a voice that wasn't his own, he whispered, "You should have left me buried." Then every candle went out. The chapel plunged into darkness again. The only light was the faint glow from the fissure, pulsing like a heartbeat. The usher stumbled backward, shaking. He turned to the others, voice cracking, "We have to get out now." But Clara's voice cut through the panic, calm, steady, almost entranced. "No," she said. "If we run, it follows." Everyone froze. "What do you mean?" She pointed at the fissure. "That light, it's not evil. It's what's left of their faith. The priests sealed it away because they didn't understand it. But now it's awake, and it wants to test us." The usher shook his head. "Test us? For what?" Her lips trembled. "To see if we still believe." The people of Alaris Hill thought they were inside a church. But that night, the chapel became something else entirely, a place where light itself demanded proof of faith. The revelation and the haunting light. Before we continue, if you're still watching, I want you to pause for a second and imagine something. Imagine standing in the dark, surrounded by people crying, praying, and whispering your name and realizing you might be the only one left who can stop what's about to happen. That's exactly where the people of St. Maria's Chapel found themselves. And none of them, not even Father Emmanuel, truly understood what had been unleashed. So before we go deeper, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because this story is about to take a turn no one expected. The light inside the fissure pulsed, slow and rhythmic, like a heartbeat beneath the earth. Father Emmanuel's body lay motionless on the marble floor, his crucifix clutched tightly in one hand. Clara knelt beside him, whispering prayers, but the words seemed to vanish before they reached his ears. Then, the ground trembled. The fissure widened, spilling out more of that golden firelight. The air shimmered. The organ let out a deep moan as its pipes expanded and groaned under invisible pressure. Someone shouted, "The church is collapsing." But it wasn't. The structure wasn't falling apart, it was changing. The wooden pews creaked, twisting as if alive. The stained glass windows glowed faintly even without moonlight, the painted saints now shifting their gaze toward the altar. Their eyes moved. A little girl in the front row whimpered. Her mother turned to comfort her, but froze when she noticed the reflection in the glass behind her daughter. It wasn't her face. It was someone else, a man in priest robes, whispering something in Latin, his mouth moving rapidly. She spun around, no one there. But when she looked back at the glass, he was still there. Smiling. Clara stood, trembling. "It's remembering," she said softly. The usher stared at her. "What do you mean?" "The church. It's remembering what they did here." Everyone's eyes turned to her. "Centuries ago," she continued, "this wasn't a chapel. It was a monastery. And the priests here practiced something forbidden, the invocation of the living light. They believed they could trap God's essence in objects, harness divine power." Father Emmanuel stirred, coughing weakly. His voice was hoarse. "You read the old texts?" She nodded. "I wanted to understand why this place felt different." He shook his head, eyes filled with dread. "You don't understand, Clara. They weren't trapping God's light. They were trapping what they thought was his." The fissure behind him glowed brighter. The hum in the walls intensified, vibrating through the floor. Flashback, narration interwoven. The camera of the mind drifts centuries backward. Torches flicker along cold stone walls. Monks chant in unison, kneeling before a blackened altar. At the center sits a golden crucifix, the same one buried beneath the chapel. Their leader, a tall monk with hollow eyes, raises a chalice filled with liquid light. In lumen, renacitor. In light, it is reborn. He pours the glowing substance over the cross. The room shakes violently. A blinding flash consumes them all. When the light fades, every monk lies dead, their faces serene, their eyes burn white. And the cross pulses, once. Then goes dark. Narrator, voiceover. They thought they'd captured heaven. But what they summoned wasn't divine. It was something that fed on faith, something that grew stronger every time someone believed. Back in the present, the fissure widened again, releasing a wave of hot wind. Papers flew, candles toppled, the pews shook violently. The usher grabbed Clara's arm. "We have to get out now." She shook her head. "No. If we run, it follows us. The light attaches itself to faith, to whoever witnesses it. The only way to stop it is to confront it here." "How?" Father Emmanuel, struggling to his feet, whispered, with disbelief. Everyone stared at him, confused. He took a shaky breath. "It feeds on those who believe it's holy. But if we reject it, if we refuse to give it meaning, it can't survive." Someone in the crowd shouted, "You're asking us to stop believing in God?" Emmanuel's eyes filled with tears. "No. I'm asking you to stop believing this is him." Suddenly, the fissure roared, and a figure stepped out of the light. At first, it looked human, tall, draped in radiant cloth, face hidden by blinding glow. But then the light flickered, and what stood before them shifted, its form unstable, changing between dozens of faces, male, female, child, elder, all whispering the same word. "Believe." The voice wasn't loud. It was soft, almost kind. But the word cut through every prayer, every whisper. Believe. Each time it spoke, someone in the room dropped to their knees, crying uncontrollably. Their eyes glowed faintly gold. Clara watched in horror. "It's taking them." The usher grabbed her hand. "We can't stop it." But Emmanuel's voice boomed across the room. "No!" He raised his crucifix, the silver burning in his palm. "You are not him. You are what hides beneath faith, what crawls inside doubt." The entity turned its shifting face toward him. The light dimmed, revealing hollow black eyes where brightness once was. It smiled. "Then show me your doubt." The ground split beneath Emmanuel's feet. He fell to his knees as tendrils of light wrapped around him, pulling him toward the fissure. The congregation screamed. Clara rushed forward, grabbing his arm. "Father! Let go of the cross." He clenched it tighter, gasping. "If I let go, it wins. Then you'll die." He looked up at her, calm, serene. "Then I die in truth." The tendrils yanked him toward the light. Clara screamed and held on, but the force was too strong. The usher and 2 others joined, pulling her backward, trying to free Emmanuel. He looked into Clara's eyes one last time. "Tell them not to look into the light." Then he was gone. The fissure sealed shut with a thunderous crack, the golden glow vanishing completely. Silence. Everyone stood motionless, too afraid to breathe. The candles had gone out again, and for a long time, no one spoke. The smell of burnt wood and incense filled the air. Then Clara whispered, He's gone." The usher sank to the floor, trembling. What just happened?" She shook her head slowly. "It took him. But I think he stopped it, for now." As she spoke, the church doors groaned and finally opened, letting in a blast of cold rain and wind. People didn't wait. They ran. Screaming, crying, tripping over each other, desperate to get outside. Clara followed last, glancing back once at the altar. The fissure was gone. But faintly, very faintly, a single line of golden light still glowed along the crack in the wall. It pulsed once. Then went still. Outside, dawn. Hours later, police and emergency services arrived. Reporters surrounded the chapel ruins. The story spread fast. A lightning strike caused structural collapse. 1 priest missing. Dozens treated for shock. No one mentioned the fissure. No one spoke of the light. Only Clara stayed behind, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the chapel. A detective approached her. "You were inside?" She nodded. "What happened in there?" Clara hesitated. "We found something that shouldn't have been found." The detective frowned. "What do you mean?" She looked at him, eyes distant. "Faith has a shadow. And we looked directly into it. When the sun rose over Alaris Hill, the chapel looked peaceful again. But deep beneath its stone floor, something was still breathing. And every now and then, when the wind was just right, the church bell would toll, once. Though no one was there to ring it. If you think the light that Father Emmanuel saw was something divine, or something darker, let me know your theory in the comments below. And remember, never look directly into the light. Sometimes, what shines the brightest, hides the deepest shadows. Subscribe for more true mystery stories like this one, always. The aftermath and the second awakening. Have you ever felt that uneasy calm after a storm, when the sky clears, but something in your gut says the danger isn't gone? That was the air around St. Mariah's Chapel 3 weeks after the night of the fissure. The church had been sealed off by authorities. The press called it a tragic lightning accident. But those who were there, they didn't believe that. And one of them, Clara, couldn't stay away. Before we continue, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell, because what she found when she went back inside the chapel rewrote everything the world thought it knew about faith and fear. The return. It was early morning when Clara parked outside the cordon ruins of St. Mariah's. Mist rolled down from the hills, shrouding the building in pale silver fog. The police tape fluttered in the breeze. She wasn't supposed to be there. The church was under investigation by the diocese and the state. But something had been gnawing at her, something she couldn't explain. The dreams hadn't stopped. Every night, she'd hear Emmanuel's voice whispering from beneath the earth. "You shouldn't have looked into the light." She woke drenched in sweat each time, heart pounding, her bedside lamp flickering as if reacting to his words. That morning, she decided she needed answers. She ducked under the tape and stepped through the broken doors. The chapel was eerily silent. Dust floated through beams of soft dawn light that pierced holes in the roof. The pews were overturned. The altar was scorched black where the fissure had once glowed. Her footsteps echoed softly as she moved toward the center. That's when she noticed something strange. The crucifix that had vanished with Father Emmanuel was back. Hanging perfectly on the altar, polished, untouched. She froze. No, that's not possible. The air shifted, colder, heavier. The faint smell of incense lingered, though the place hadn't been used in weeks. She reached out to touch the cross, and flinched. It was warm. The investigator. Outside, a car pulled up. A man in a long coat stepped out, Detective Rowan Hale, the same officer who'd questioned Clara that night. He'd been haunted, too. Since the night of the incident, he'd developed a habit, checking his mirrors twice, never turning off his bedside light. And last night, his daughter woke up screaming, saying she'd seen a gold man standing in her room, whispering the word believe. When dispatch told him someone had breached the chapel site, he didn't hesitate to respond. He stepped inside cautiously. "Clara?" She turned, startled. "Detective Hale." "You shouldn't be here," he said, though his tone carried no anger. "They sealed this place for a reason." "I had to come," she whispered. "He's still here." "Emmanuel?" She nodded. "Or, what's left of him." "The unearthed chamber." Clara led him to the altar. The fissure was sealed, but faint cracks still glowed beneath the soot. She pressed her hand against it. "Do you feel that?" Hale touched the wall. It was faintly vibrating, like the heartbeat of something buried alive. He frowned. "This isn't natural. We had geologists here. They said there's no seismic activity." Clara crouched down and brushed away debris at the base of the altar. Beneath a loose slab, something metallic shimmered. She pried it open, revealing a narrow tunnel descending into the earth. Hale sighed. "Of course." He drew his flashlight. "You're not going down there alone." They descended the narrow stone steps, each one damp with condensation. The deeper they went, the colder it became. The air grew thick, stale, ancient, almost sweet like decaying flowers. When they reached the bottom, they entered a chamber that neither of them could have imagined. The walls were lined with carvings, ancient Latin inscriptions, spiraling symbols, and drawings of monks kneeling before a burning cross. At the center of the room stood a stone coffin. It was sealed with iron bands, and on its lid, carved in perfect Latin, were the words, "In lumen cadet umbra." In the light, the shadow falls. Clara stepped closer. Her breath fogged in the cold air. "He said those words," she whispered. "The night he died, the same phrase." Hale aimed his flashlight at the coffin's edges. One of the iron bands had rusted away. Something inside the crack glowed faintly gold. "Clara," he said carefully, "step back." She ignored him and placed her palm on the lid. It felt alive, a slow pulse beneath her fingertips. The glow brightened, spreading through the cracks. "Clara!" Hale grabbed her arm, pulling her back, but it was too late. The lid burst open. The second awakening. A shockwave of light filled the chamber, blinding them both. Hale hit the floor, covering his eyes. The air turned hot, humming like electricity. And from inside the coffin, a figure sat up. It wasn't Father Emmanuel. It wasn't even human. It was draped in cloth that shimmered like liquid gold, its face obscured by blinding light. But where its heart should have been, there was a void, a black hole sucking in everything around it. Clara crawled backward, eyes wide. "No," she whispered. "You were sealed. You were gone." The entity tilted its head, studying her. When it spoke, its voice was layered, hundreds of whispers speaking as one. The priest traded his light for silence. "You woke me with belief." Clara shook her head, trembling. "I don't believe you. You're not real." The entity's smile spread, stretching impossibly wide. "You believe enough to speak to me." The chamber trembled. Rocks fell from the ceiling. Hale drew his gun instinctively and fired, 3 shots that vanished into the light without sound. The entity turned its gaze toward him. The flashlight in his hand flickered violently, then burst. He dropped it, clutching his hand in pain. The voice echoed again. "Every light casts a shadow. Every faith leaves something behind." Then it raised one glowing hand, and the cross that had reappeared on the altar upstairs manifested in its palm, burning bright white. "This is what you seek, Clara. The bridge between belief and truth. Will you take it?" Clara backed away, shaking her head. "No, not again." The light dimmed slightly, like disappointment. "Then it will find another." The glow surged, and in that blinding flash, Clara screamed. The vanishing. When Hale woke, the chamber was silent. Dust floated through still air. The coffin was empty. The glow was gone. But Clara was nowhere to be seen. He climbed back to the surface, stumbling through the ruined chapel, calling her name. Nothing. Then, just as he reached the door, he heard it, the bell. One deep toll, echoing through the empty valley. He turned back toward the altar, and froze. There, standing exactly where the fissure had been, was Clara. Her body was still, her eyes open, glowing faintly gold. Hale approached slowly. "Clara." She blinked once, mechanically. "Clara, it's me. It's Rowan. We need to get out of here." She turned her head toward him. Her expression was peaceful, almost holy. "It's awake again," she whispered. "And it's inside me." Hale stumbled backward, drawing his gun again, terrified. "What do you mean inside you?" She smiled faintly. "He tried to bury it. You tried to understand it. But it doesn't want faith anymore." Her voice deepened, layered with another, the same ancient tone from the fissure. "It wants witnesses." Then the golden light erupted around her, shattering every window in the chapel. When the dust cleared, Clara was gone. The tape. 2 days later, Hale returned to his precinct, his face pale, his mind unraveling. He'd been ordered to drop the investigation, spiritual matters, the church called it. But he couldn't. Late that night, he sat alone in the evidence room, replaying the security footage from a camera that had been installed near the chapel weeks before the incident. The footage showed Clara entering at 4:13 a.m. At 4:24, the building shook. A flash of golden light filled the doorway. And at 4:25, a figure stepped out. It wasn't Clara. It was taller, brighter, wrapped in robes of gold. It turned toward the camera and whispered something that made Hale's blood run cold. "In lumen cadet umbra." Then the camera shorted out. Hale sat frozen. He reached for the phone to call his captain, but the line was dead. And from behind him, in the dark evidence room, a voice whispered, "Detective Hale, do you still believe?" The chapel was demolished months later. But even now, locals claim that on certain nights, a golden figure walks the hillside where it once stood. And every time it appears, the church bell tolls, once. No wind. No storm. Just the sound of something remembering. If you think the light that came from the coffin was divine justice, or something far darker pretending to be holy, tell me your theory in the comments below. And remember, not all light saves. Some light hunts. Subscribe for more terrifying mysteries told just like this, always. The night of no return. The forest had gone completely silent. Even the wind seemed to have vanished. Inside cabin 41, the air was thick with tension, a suffocating quiet that pressed against every wall. The 3 remaining campers, Liam, Rachel, and Evan, sat frozen around the flickering lantern, listening to the forest breathe around them. That's when Rachel whispered, barely audible, "It's close." Her eyes weren't on the door, or the windows. They were fixed on the ceiling, right above them. Thump. The sound vibrated through the old wood, slow and heavy. Something was moving up there. Evan grabbed the flashlight, aiming it at the ceiling. Dust drifted down as another step echoed above. Then another. "Attic," Liam breathed. "It's in the attic." Rachel's eyes widened. "There's no attic." Evan's hand froze. The beam of light trembled in his grip. "Then where the hell is it walking?" The thumping stopped. The silence that followed was so deep it almost hurt. Then, a whisper, carried through the vents, a voice so faint they could barely tell if it was human. It said one word. "Leave." Liam bolted up, panic breaking through his fear. "That's it. I'm done. I'm getting out of here." He yanked open the door, only to find the fog so thick it looked like solid white walls pressing in from all sides. The trees were gone, the path was gone, and even the porch steps vanished into nothingness. "Liam," Rachel whispered, "close it." But he didn't. He just stood there, staring into the fog, like something inside it was calling to him. Then, from deep within that fog, they heard it. A voice that sounded exactly like him. "Rachel," it said softly. "Help me." Rachel's heart dropped. That's you." Liam stepped out into the fog. "Liam, no!" Evan shouted, grabbing for him, but his hand slipped through nothing but cold air. Liam vanished. Just like that. The door slammed shut on its own. They were now 2. Rachel broke down, sobbing, while Evan pressed his ear against the wall. The whispers had returned, circling them, faster and faster, whispering fragments of words: "Die, stay, mine." The lantern dimmed. The air grew colder. Evan turned to Rachel. "We can't stay here. We'll freeze to death if we do." But Rachel wasn't listening. She was staring at the far wall. Her mouth opened slightly, and she whispered, "There's something in the corner." Evan turned. "Nothing. Just shadow." Then the shadow moved. A shape began to peel itself off the wall, long, angular, and wrong. No eyes, no mouth, just a humanoid figure stretching upward like smoke. It hovered there, soundless. Evan grabbed the axe from near the fireplace. "Stay back." The figure didn't move. "Stay back," he shouted again, swinging wildly. But his axe sliced through nothing. The figure vanished. The cabin fell into silence once again. Rachel, shaking, whispered, "It's playing with us." Evan looked at her. "We have to burn it. Burn the whole place down." They moved quickly, desperate. Evan smashed open the kerosene container while Rachel grabbed old newspapers and kindling. Every sound echoed too loud, every movement felt watched. Evan poured the kerosene across the floorboards, up the walls, and around the door frame. His hands shook as he lit a match. "We're ending this." He dropped it. The fire caught instantly, too fast. The cabin exploded into orange and black smoke. Flames crawled across the ceiling, roaring as if alive. "Go!" he screamed. They ran for the door, but when Evan tried to pull it open, nothing. It was locked. He yanked again. Still locked. He turned to Rachel. She was gone. "Rachel," he screamed, coughing in the smoke. "Rachel." Then he saw her, standing perfectly still by the window, staring out into the firelit fog. "Rachel, we have to go." She turned slowly, her face pale, eyes wide with something beyond fear. "It won't let us leave." The fire spread up the walls, swallowing everything. Evan rushed toward her, but as he did, she smiled faintly and whispered, "He's behind you." Evan spun around. There it was. The shadow figure, tall and twisting, standing in the fire. Its form shimmered like heat waves, and from its chest, 1,000 whispers poured out at once. The world went black. 3 weeks later, when the search team arrived, Cabin 41 was nothing more than a blackened shell. The structure had burned down completely, but strangely, there were no human remains. Not even bones. The sheriff called it an accident, an uncontrolled fire in a decaying structure. But the volunteers who helped with the cleanup said otherwise. They found handprints burned into the walls that hadn't collapsed. Dozens of them. Some were child-sized. And on one remaining beam, they found something written in charcoal. It's still here. Months later, the return. A YouTuber who specializes in abandoned locations found Cabin 41's ruins deep in the forest. His video, uploaded months later, showed the structure mostly reduced to ash, except for one standing wall. He laughed nervously while filming, brushing off the local legends. They say this place is haunted, he joked. But look, it's just a bunch of burned wood and, wait. He paused, staring at something off camera. What the hell is that? The camera shook slightly, and then the video cut out. When it was uploaded to his channel, his subscribers pointed out something chilling in the few remaining frames. A shadow figure standing in the distance, almost invisible in the brightness of the daylight, as if it was trying to hide. The YouTuber was never seen again. If this story unsettled you, then don't scroll just yet. Because here's the chilling part, the real-life forest where Cabin 41 once stood is still open to hikers. Locals claim that every autumn, campers report hearing whispers at night, the same word, over and over again. Leave. So next time you find yourself walking deep in the woods and your phone suddenly loses signal, stop. Listen. Because maybe, just maybe, you're standing where Cabin 41 used to be. If you love stories like this, the strange, the mysterious, the unexplained, then make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, because I've got more stories just like this one, every single time, always.